Nice. So, a little bit of check-in for me. Last Tuesday, 2 weeks ago, I set the goal in my timeline for a cool space to have our Transformation Tuesday events in, and also I'm thinking about I've decided and put in my timeline to do my 40th anniversary songwriting commemorational event, November 19th. It's a Saturday. Write it down, save the date. And I am going to invite my dream band to join me, and whoever's free that night hopefully will join me. I already spoke to Joe Monona and Riley O'Neill, who are two amazing musicians who I was in the recording studio with last week. And so we got that coming up November 19th, and I was in the recording studio last Wednesday, and I cranked out a couple of very rough mixes, which hopefully you guys have heard, of the Rain song with Joe Monona, just kind of showing me some ideas. It's not a final thing at all, and normally I would never ever release it, but I was so excited, and part of what I'm doing here is to include people in the process of creativity and personal development, and really me walking my talk and teaching as I go. And one of the main reasons I teach all this stuff is so that I can learn it, and so that I can learn it so well that it really gets into my unconscious mind so deeply that it becomes my new default program. And so that was Wednesday. What happened Thursday? That was Thursday. Wednesday, I worked with a client, and so I did a 4-hour intensive with a client on Wednesday, and then Thursday I had the recording session. Friday, I drove to Plymouth, Massachusetts, and I took part in this amazing conference for men called the Elite Man Conference. It was put on by Elite Man magazine, which was founded by this young guy. He's 25 years old, and he has a podcast, and he's interviewing people all over the world, thought leaders and movers and shakers, about what it means to be a man in today's world, and what it is that we as men need to do to really expand our consciousness and our awareness. And my interpretation is that so that we as men can show up for women as leaders, not as bullies, bosses, or assholes, but as the kind of leaders that women are longing for in this world. And so it was an amazing thing. It was his first year, and I was so admiring his willingness to haul off and do this. I mean, speakers flew in from all over the world, and like a lot of these events, getting the people in the seats who could really benefit from these speakers is obviously, it was pretty clear that he's got to work on that for next year, because at one point half the room was up on stage doing a panel, because half the room was the speakers, and it was intense. It started at like 8 in the morning, and there was speaker after speaker after speaker after speaker after speaker after speaker until like 8 at night, and we took a few breaks. It was intense. But the strange thing was, Monday, after two days of this, I had plenty of energy. I was so fired up by the ideas and by rubbing shoulders with other people who were really working to put their gifts out into the world in a way that made a positive difference, that it was really inspiring. And it really kind of cemented in my mind that I wanted to teach some of my rapport building, rapid rapport building, modern Jedi mind magic connection skills that really changed my life. I mean, I was making friends. I was making friends like I've never could imagine making friends when I was in high school, and it was delightful, and it's such a pleasure to meet new people, particularly people that you really resonate with, that it's really affirming, and it's kind of one of those self-fulfilling prophecies that, hey, I'm a friendly person and I like people, and magic can happen. And so I want to tell you a quick story. Saturday morning, I went to this New World Tavern, mostly because my favorite restaurant in Albany is the New World Bistro Bar. And I was like, oh, there's a new world here. I think it is a new world. And so I went in, and it's really a tavern, but they were open for breakfast. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So I went in. There were a couple of people sitting at tables, but the woman behind the bar was like, come on, sit at the bar. It's much better. And her energy was so friendly. And I was like, sure, sit at the bar. So I sat at the bar and just kind of engaged her and this other guy in conversation. And, you know, she got me a wonderful breakfast and filled up my coffee. And, you know, we're just kind of, it was very quiet, so there was room to chat a little bit. And I said, so, you know, where's a good place to park around here? Because Plymouth, Massachusetts is a tourist town. There's the Plymouth Rock, there's the Mayflower 2 replica, and by God, that is where kind of America sort of started, you know? If you don't want to compete too much with Jamestown, Virginia. But it was kind of the second outpost, and it's a hysterical place, very historical. And there's not much parking. And she was like, well, can you keep a secret? Can I keep a secret? No, I'm going to put this on the internet. I won't reveal where it is, but she said there's a parking area it says employee parking only, and it's for all the people that work at all the restaurants and stuff, and this time of day there's no one in that lot. You could park there and no one will give you a ticket. So it was like a gift, and that's the kind of thing that happens when you go out into the world and create rapport on an unconscious level. People go out of their way to help you, because why? On the unconscious level, people like people who are like them. And so what we're going to be doing is demonstrating a way to say to another person's unconscious mind, hey, you know what? I'm like you. Let's be friends. Now, you don't have to say anything, but unconsciously you're making a connection. And the very fact that you want to make a connection literally causes you to be present. And I think that's really what people feel is, oh my God, this person's present. They're actually paying attention to me, but in a very healthy way, you know? And I suppose maybe if you were a bad person, you could use this in a bad way, but I don't know. It's always kind of worked as a win-win in my mind. So I'm going to explain it in a moment, but I want to tell some more stories, and an idea just flitted across my mental movie screen that I wanted to share, and I don't know if I don't know.
Hit the rewind button.
So anyway, I don't know what it is. Oh, I was going to take a drink of water. I have this open, but I didn't drink. So many people are aware of this, but communication is a very small percentage verbal words. So a whopping 55% of our communication is non-verbal. Actually, it's more than that. We have 38% is kind of tonal, and the rest. Can anybody do the math for me? 55 plus 38. What's left? Is it like 7%?
Yeah, 7%.
Yeah, it's 7% or so words, right? Now, a number of studies have proven this, and of course, I know people who think this is baloney. However, forget the percentages. The reality is we can communicate without words. If any of you have ever met a Labrador Retriever, have you ever met a Labrador Retriever? Anybody know a Labrador Retriever? Any kind of a dog? You can say to the dog, that was the command to sit. My dog would sit. I could literally do this to my dog and he would come over to me. Right? I could do this and he would stay. That's not words, but I am communicating with another species perfectly well using my body, hand signals. So what we want to play with is how to put this nonverbal thing to work so that you are putting A, yourself at ease, and B, the other person at ease. And as I said before, we like people who are like us, and we want to do business with people who are like us. We want to hang out with people who are like us because perception is projection. And if you hang out with someone who is so different from you that you can't even communicate, it's not really going to happen as a friendship, right? The good thing is there's so many universal human things that we can almost always find a way to connect with somebody in a positive way. All right? Any questions so far? Let's see what we got on the chat here. Oh, my Papaloo is on. Cool and groovy. Any questions? No questions? All right.
In today's world, people don't go face to face as much as they used to.
Well, we're going to change that,
I
Susan.
hope so.
We are setting out on Tuesdays anyway to change that. Because yes, people there is this kind of wall. People are hiding behind their computers and stuff. And what was so wonderful about this past weekend for me is I was hanging out for 2.5 days with a bunch of other people who I had a lot in common with, because they were all kind of speakers. They were all people who were working on themselves, self-help experts, and it was so amazing to actually hang out with real live people. So I think the combination is good, and I think there is going to be a movement of people really seeking to get out and to connect with other people. And it was funny to walk down the street of Plymouth and to see everybody looking down at their phone. And it was like, that's crazy. We are living in a weird time. So I think there's never been a better time to learn some of these rapport skills. So I want to tell you a couple of quick stories before I jump into the meat of the moment. I told you, I think last week, I was at this car dealer, and there was a woman. There were two women behind the service counter, and my Chrysler Grand Caravan at the time needed a significant repair. It was more than $1,000 at the time, and the first woman was chatting with one of the mechanics, and I overheard her say, "Hey, I gotta go sell this repair to this guy," meaning me. Like, I did not want to be sold a repair. So I did not feel rapport with her at all. I felt angry and ugh. But then she took a phone call, yet another rude thing to do, and then this young, very attractive woman with a huge engagement ring on her finger started paying attention to me, and I was like, okay, I'm going to practice this. Now, what did I do to connect unconsciously with her? Anybody know? I smiled. I might have smiled. If she smiled, I smiled. When we smile at each other, right, we're actually, and it's really hard. Everybody smile, It's hard to not smile back when someone smiles at you, because we are mirroring and matching what the other person is doing. So that's kind of obvious. I smiled. She smiled. She tilted her head. I tilted my head a little bit. Like, if I wanted to kind of connect with Susan right now, if I didn't already have rapport, I might mirror her. We call this computer.
I'm just covering my laugh.
Right? There you go. But notice Ed's doing the same thing. If you look at a group of people at a cocktail party, the ones that are deep in conversation are usually matching and mirroring each other. You'll see three people in a kind of a little group, and they may all three be kind of having their arms crossed or leaning, or you'll notice when people have their legs crossed that it's all in the same direction. Not always, but we have a small group here. But then when somebody recrosses their legs and shifts, a few moments later, the other people in the group will do it as well, because that's an unconscious rapport signal. And one of the things that I did in that moment was I matched her eye blinks.
Oh, wow.
Because people are unconscious of their eye blinks. But for me to pay attention to your eye blink, I have to actually pay attention to you. Right? And if you don't blink your eyes, it's not like a staring thing. I'm staring at Ed right now. But you'll notice someone blink until you blink. And you look at the next person and just blink. Now, I taught this technique to a group of high school students and their teachers as part of a how to do well in a job interview program, conference, event. And it was really weird because I was teaching this to the group, and then the teachers came up to me afterwards, and I felt like I knew them. Why? Because they were actually practicing with me. Right? As I was saying, match my eye blinks, they're matching my eye blinks, right? And the next thing is breathing. If someone is talking, are they breathing in or breathing out?
Out.
They're breathing out. So if I'm talking blah, 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 you can just breathe out a little. And it's the strangest thing, but you'll know you have rapport when you kind of get a warm feeling in your body, a feeling of genuinely liking this other person. And the bottom line is they'll often say, wow, I feel like I've known you forever. And that's what we want. If you want to make friends, you want to connect with people as fast as possible on a deep unconscious level so that you can literally just begin to have a friendship. One of my best friends, Mike Covey, who studied came and studied my NLP training 2 years ago, I think it was. He was someone who, it took me a while to really get to know him. We didn't become friends right away, but every time he worked at a store that I would go to from time to time, and whenever he was in there, we would have a wonderful conversation. And while we're having that conversation, I would match his eye blinks, right? When I work with a new client, when they're sitting in the chair, I will connect with them using unconscious rapport techniques so that they feel comfortable and at home, and so I do as well. I've used this with middle school students who are not quite human yet, I have to tell you, and who I'm kind of afraid of, just to let you know, because I have trauma from middle school. They're not nice people because they're so messed up with all their self-consciousness and stuff. And so I would literally, while I was waiting for my school performance to begin, I would, catch somebody's eye, and if they were like all kind of like this, I would kind of match and mirror their body language, and wink at them. That would be fun. And they'd be like, and sometimes they'd be like, and I'd be like, and then I'd smile, And so I would literally just find people in the audience as the middle school kids are coming in to connect with. And it was the strangest thing when I started my program. They were so receptive to what I had to do and what I had to say. So those are a few things. So and I have a whole lot about this in my Reluctant Salesperson course, which is at honesthypnosis.com. And I have several CDs of information about it and a whole workbook and stuff. But so we want to match and mirror. So does anybody know the difference between matching and mirroring someone? Anybody?
Matching you are duplicating exactly what they're doing. Mirroring is you're doing it sort of like in the opposite direction.
Right. So, for example, everybody put your right hand up in the air. I am now matching you. Because my right hand is up, your right hand is up. Keep your right hands up. I am now mirroring you. Right? My left hand is up.
Right.
So I will often, if I'm doing timeline work, you put your hands down now. Thank you. Thank you for the audience compliance. That was lovely. That's another way to build rapport. And you'll see it's almost a cliche motivational speaker thing. How many of you have ever blah, blah, blah? And you get people to raise their hands, right? We're all raising our hands together. I've just done unconscious rapport. And what I like to do is I'll say, how many people have this? Great. How many people this? Great. And how many people just hate raising your hand? I just caught them in a double bind, and they're like, not me. Right. But either way, I'm going to get some kind of response from them and interaction, and I'm going to build rapport on that unconscious level. But you don't want to, when you're making friends, you don't go, "Hi, raise your hand and I will match you over here." No, it's subtle, and it's essentially you paying attention and really being present for that other person. And so my two favorite things are the eye blink, and I don't do it all the time. I just do it a couple of times when I first meet someone. Then I don't need to do it anymore. It's just like a little, it's like meeting someone from your hometown in downtown Rome, Italy. You bump into them on the street and it's like, "Oh my God, what's going on? How are you doing?" And it's like all of a sudden it's just like, you're so glad to see them. "What are you doing here? This is so weird. What a weird serendipitous thing. We bumped into you on the street in Italy. That's crazy." And that actually happened to my former in-laws. They literally met someone that they knew one time when they were in Italy. They bumped into one on the street. I had that happen in New York City one day. I bumped into somebody right on the street who I went to high school with. I'm like, "Jeff, what are you doing?" It's like, "Mark, oh my God, what's going on?" So it's a kind of a cool feeling, and it can bring a wonderful connection into your life. So the eye blink is one thing I do, and matching someone's breathing, and not a lot, just a little, just enough to connect and to have that moment where I am present with them, right? Now, a lot of the dating gurus out there, one of the terrifying things for a lot of shy men is, "What do I say? What do I say? What do I say to a girl? What do I say? What do I say when I'm first introducing myself? How do I not be nervous?" Blah, blah. So they have all this thing. And essentially, someone was saying they did a study where they literally recorded, all of the first things people said. And then they checked in with the people who were approached to be made friends with. And nobody remembered the first thing anybody said. So that the language piece is, yes, a small part of the puzzle. But we want to connect with people in a way that actually kind of opens up the channels of communication. Now, one of the differences between general rapport techniques and a rapport technique that perhaps a man would use, he sees an attractive woman and he wants to introduce himself, that's a whole different thing from just generally wanting to make friends, because you have a whole different dynamic going on. So we're not going to get into that tonight, but suffice it to say that there are people who have the ability to literally make friends wherever they go. What do they do? What do they do different? Well, a bunch of researchers figured this stuff out, that when people are having a conversation and enjoying each other, they're matching and mirroring totally unconsciously. And so if you actually do that to start with, you can kind of jumpstart the friend-making process. All right? So that's one thing. Any questions? Now, one of my last big NLP trainings, I had 20 people in summer of 2008, and it was funny because I met one of the students there at somebody else's workshop, and I sat next to her and I matched and mirrored her eye blinks and her breathing, and she really liked me. She really liked me. And when I started teaching the rapport building technique, she was like, "Did you use this on me when we first met?" And I said, "I didn't use it on you. I used it with you." And the very fact that you're here today, to me, is proof that it was a very good thing, But she was like, "Well, I wouldn't practice this without telling someone. I would say, I would now like to practice my rapport building skills with you. Would that be okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, try that. See how it works." People don't want to think that someone is using a technique to be friendly with them. And I don't, but I was a painfully shy person. And I know a lot of us introverts need all the tools and support we can get to make connections in the world that support us, because it can be lonely being an introvert.
A smile is a technique.
A smile is a technique. Is it manipulative? You know,
Well.
right? I mean, and there are, if you get a bad feeling from someone who is trying to make friends with you, then listen to that.
I have
Yeah.
to share.
Yes.
I walked into the museum today and I smiled at somebody as I came in. And just a smile. What are you smiling at? Which is what I laughed at earlier.
Like, oh, good. What are you? Well, they just revealed that they're not worthy to hang out with you because they're operating in a much lower consciousness, right? And your response could have been, "Can't tell you."
We ended up having a nice conversation.
Oh, good. Okay, good. See, there you go. So awesome. So cool and groovy. Any other questions? Any other statements?
What happens when two people are trying to match and mirror each other, not knowing that the other one's trying to mirror match the other one?
You don't have to worry about that because so few people have any clue about this. You know, and when I'm doing a training, I have people break up into different groups and practice it. You know, we have.
I won't do it to you.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways we can match and mirror. We can match and mirror. Physiology is really the easiest, fastest, largest area of communication. So for me, the eye blink is great because, and I find, you know, normally I'm pretty bad at remembering names, but if I actually match someone's eye blink and use their name out loud, I can remember their name a lot better. But it takes a little practice and a little discipline, and I sometimes forget. Sometimes I forget to do it. So let's see if we have any questions here. Okay, Kate had a good point. It's hard to tell what someone's breathing is, and so when someone is speaking, they're breathing out. So that's how you can match their breathing. You don't want to like look at someone's chest, you know. What's going on there? You know, is your chest rising? And some people are belly breathers, some people are, shoulder breathers. And if you really want to go crazy with rapport, and you happen to notice from your peripheral vision that they're a belly breather, you can start breathing from your belly. And on the unconscious level, they will feel it and just like you. It's the strangest thing, but it really works. I challenge you to try this. Let's see what other people have said here. Can't hear the audience comments, so I'll repeat them. Got it. Thanks, Kate. All right. So I will repeat. I thought the mics were picking it up, but evidently not. Okay. So the eye blink and the breathing are, for me, the easiest, fastest, and we don't have a lot of time, so those are kind of my nuggets for you to just practice in this next week and see what happens. And if you guys are, at Unity on Sunday and you have an opportunity to practice, see what happens. See how you feel in your body when you practice this with a few people, and notice, do you feel a difference? I would like to hear it because I think you will. I think it'll be a lot of fun. So now, one story I wanted to share with you that popped in. When I first opened my practice in Guilford, Connecticut, back in 2004, I think it was, 2003, 2004, a woman came in who wanted help stopping smoking, and she was a secret smoker. And she was terrified that her kids were going to find out that she was a smoker because she basically told them smoking is bad, right? And so I worked with her, and she was so impressed with how easily she let go of the smoking habit with hypnosis that she wanted to bring her daughter in. Now, one of the things that I do with a hypnosis client is I want to get rapport with them. Why do I want to get rapport with them? So that they will follow my suggestions. Because if we are in rapport, they will follow my suggestions. If we're not in rapport, they will counter my suggestions. They will fight them. They will resist them. So for the benefit of my client, I want to have that rapport with them so I can drop the suggestions into their unconscious mind so that they can make the change they have paid me to help them get. So she came a couple of weeks later with her daughter. Now her daughter had been adopted, and she had grown up part of her young life in Brazil, and she had been malnourished. So she had some kind of neurological, she was kind of behind a little bit. She was in, I think, 9th grade, and she was in kind of a special ed track. And so the daughter was all kind of fidgety and stuff, and the mother came in and she wanted kind of a follow-up session while I was kind of working with the daughter. So I was literally doing 2 hypnosis sessions at once. With the mother, I matched her eye blinks. With the daughter, because she was all fidgety and stuff, I matched the movements of her legs with my pinky. This is crossover matching and mirroring. So I was connecting with the mother and making sure we were still in rapport. And then on the arm of my chair, I just matched the kid's wiggling with her leg. She was doing this leg jiggle thing. So I started like this, and then I gradually slowed my pinky down. And her leg motion slowed down as well. And she went deep into trance, and I suggested to her, which I'm going to suggest to all of us, a little story. And I said, you know, neurologically speaking, you have so much excess capacity that it's like our telephone system. If you're making a phone call from New York to Los Angeles and there's a thunderstorm, let's say in Chicago, and normally the call would be routed through Chicago, the system automatically would reroute it through St. Louis. And I just made some suggestions that her neurology had plenty of redundant backup and that she just had to open up and access those networks in her mind. And so we finished the session, they went off, and in the following couple of months, this kid literally, her schoolwork just started going up and up and up. So to the point where within 6 months, she was main tracked with the normal rest of the kids in the school. And to me, that was like, holy guacamole, this stuff works. And then the ultimate test came. The mother called me and said, listen, my husband and I are having some kind of marital stuff, you know, and the mother was deeply kinesthetic. She was very kinesthetic. And another way to build rapport, you notice someone might use the language, I feel a lot, I feel this, I feel that. You would want to use the same language. Well, I feel this, I feel that, you know. If someone's auditory, they might say, well, it sounds good to me, clear as a bell, you know. Or they might be very visual, and they might say, clear can also be a visual word. They might say, yeah, I see what you mean, right? So you can also match and mirror their language, and that takes a little more kind of thinking. And then there's a kind of a fourth track, a fourth channel of communication that we call auditory digital. And these people are abstract communicators. And you'll notice someone who's an auditory digital person who is in that channel of communication, because they'll say, well, the bottom line is, or, well, studies show, or, you know, where's the proof for your hypothesis? You know, they'll use larger words, they'll use words like, you know, I don't know, words that are nominalizations a lot, and a nominalization is a noun that doesn't fit in a wheelbarrow. So like relationship, for example, is a nominalization of the verb relating. So he comes in and he's totally auditory digital. And that's like a group of people that I have a hard time communicating with, because I'm massively kinesthetic and I'm massively visual, and I might be somewhat auditory, and I can kind of jump around. But auditory digital, I was kind of intimidated. This guy was a high earning, kind of corporate alpha male kind of guy, and so I'm trying to connect with her kinesthetically, and I'm trying to connect with him auditory digitally. And you know, they asked me what it would cost for the stuff, and I told them the price, and the guy goes, that's a lot of money. What's the bottom line? Right? And I looked at him, and to this day, I don't remember what the hell I said. But I used a string of auditory digital words, and I finished with, and the bottom line is that, what's the cost of a divorce? got his attention. And he was like, I'm listening. Right? And so like I was creating, building rapport unconsciously with both of them. And later on, this guy came and joined one of my weight loss classes. And I just saw him on Facebook, and he and his wife are still married. So I don't know if they're happily married, but I worked with both of them, and they really seemed to get the fact that they were having a challenge communicating. Because she was in her feelings, and he was in his abstract bean counter kind of mode. So when you're talking with someone, you can also build rapport by using the same kinds of languaging that they use. There's a whole other area of tonality. So if someone has a really high voice, you don't want to mimic them, but you would maybe raise your voice up a little bit, right? My friend Michael Guerin has a quite high voice for a man, and you know, he's used to people thinking he's a woman on the phone. It pisses him off, but he has a pretty high voice for a guy. You know, so if I were to build rapport with him, which I don't need to now because we've been friends for 10 years, we are in rapport, you know, I would just raise my voice a little bit and talk here, you know. And for example, if I was talking to a woman who had a low voice, I wouldn't talk down like this to her, but I would kind of settle into the lower end of my range. Or if I'm speaking with a man who has a low voice, I would kind of settle in to a lower, more chest voice. So tonality, I mean, and there's like 5 different tonalities. There's the different kinds of vocal tonality. So you know, someone might have kind of a gravelly voice, and someone might have a very clear as a bell, auditory sounding voice, like a radio disc jockey. You know, so you can play with all these different things to match and mirror. But for me, the bottom line is I have links of breathing. You can learn that in a second. We don't have a lot of time, and we're coming up on 15 minutes to go. So try this week. See what happens. Now, if you also notice you have limiting beliefs about making friends, we did our belief change a couple of weeks ago. Go back to that video and see if you can remember some of that and change the belief about yourself that people aren't friendly around here. My friend Matthew, I bust him for this all the time, like Albany, the people in Albany. I'm like, dude, wherever you go, I'm sure you'll find the same people, because wherever we go, there we are, you know. So it's not the people, it's us. You know, we have the responsibility to be the creators of our own world. And I kind of like being able to go anywhere, anytime, any place, and connect with a stranger, not to get stuff, but to really enjoy their company. And 9 times out of 10, they have given me tremendous gifts. Like the woman at the car dealer, she literally came in and got her manager to drive me home, even though the courtesy bus was going to be delayed. And I deeply appreciated that. I didn't need it, but it was a wonderful byproduct of building rapport with her. And from that point forward, every time I went in there, oh my God, it's our favorite customer. Hi, what can we do for you today? And it's nice to get good service. And I have done this so many places. One last story. My son Andrew and Miles and I were walking around New Haven at a time when my second marriage was pretty much over. We'd been married for exactly a year. It was a disaster. All kinds of horrible stuff came up. And it was like, I didn't know if I was going to make it. And I had to find an apartment. I had to find a place, and my transmission had just blown on my wonderful Chrysler minivan. And I didn't have money for a security deposit. I was living with some friends of mine for a couple of weeks until I could find an apartment. And I just decided I would trust Source. And my sons and I just started walking around New Haven. Like, what's down here? I've never been. Is this a cool place to live? And we wandered over to a little place called Worcester Square Park. And it's a beautiful, beautiful place in the spring. The cherry trees are all in bloom, and it's just gorgeous. Japanese tourists come and take pictures. It's just, you know, it's a real magnet. And it's all these beautiful old brownstones surrounding the park. And I'm like, this is nice. It's probably really expensive, but interesting. And I saw on the corner a sign that said 3-bedroom apartment for rent, and the phone number of the landlady. And, you know, I was like, huh, it's interesting. And as we were looking at the sign, I was about to call the number. A woman comes around the corner carrying groceries, a young woman, and she goes, oh, are you interested in the apartment? And I'm like, yeah. And the moment I spoke to her, I matched her eye blinks. And as she spoke to me, I breathed out. And she said, you want to come in and see it? I mean, this is on the street of New Haven, Connecticut. It's not I never thought of Connecticut as a friendly place, you know? And we're like, sure, thanks. So we go in. I mean, total strangers off the street. She shows us the apartment, and it was really cool. And it was big enough so that I could do my workshops there and see clients there. And there was an extra bedroom, so if I couldn't handle the rent, I could get a roommate. It was like, this has some flexibility. And it had off-street parking. And it overlooked the park. It was on the 3rd floor. I'm like, this could work, you know? Got a built-in exercise program going up to the 3rd floor. It's cool. So I called the landlady and, you know, did the same thing. I matched her breathing. When she spoke, I breathed out, even on the phone. And she was a woman who had an Eastern European accent, and she was leaving for Prague like the next day. She was a professor at Yale, and, you know, she had owned a couple of places. And so I spoke to her a little bit, and as we were leaving, I heard the phone ring, and I knew she was talking to the tenant, right? So we left. It was all cool, and I'm driving home, and she calls me in my car and says, I want you to have the apartment. Can you come by on Monday? So went on Monday, and I was like, she wanted, I think, $1,400 a month for the apartment, and I said, listen, I don't have a security deposit, and I was not expecting to pay that much. And she was like, well, I'll work with you because I really want you to have the place. I feel good about you. So she lowered the monthly rent to $1,200 a month, and she waived the security deposit, and I actually ended up doing handyman work for her to pay off the security deposit. And there was a time when I moved to New Haven that like clients disappeared because I thought my clients from Guilford would follow me, but they didn't because they had to go over a bridge. I don't know. So I really, you know, I almost couldn't pay the rent, but because I had rapport with her, she literally gave me a job doing kind of upkeep and maintenance in all her different apartments. And then my practice began to build. And that has happened pretty much every time I've looked for an apartment. So this is a very useful thing to connect with people who are in a position to negotiate with you and to make sure, you know, I didn't feel like I was taking advantage of her because I was a good tenant. And once I got my stuff together, she always got her rent on time, and I took very good care of the building. So, and I fixed a couple of problems that her handyman couldn't figure out that were, you know, really deteriorating the building. So for me, it feels very much like a win-win, not a manipulative thing, but a real like, hey, I'm a good person, here I am, you seem like a good person, let's let each other know that unconsciously so that we can begin the friendship, all right? So that's my rapid rapport, the least you need to know crash course. I can take a whole day teaching this, but I've done it in less than an hour. So match someone's eye brink, and match their breathing, eye blinks and breathing, and play with it. See what happens. And it doesn't have to be a lot, just a little bit. And then you can forget about it and just enjoy their company. So that's my story for tonight, and I'm sticking with it. Any questions? A question, yes.
A technical question. So are there times when you match rather than mirror, or does it not matter?
Yes, a technical question. Are there times when you match or mirror and does it matter? Yes. Let's say you're sitting down with your boss and you have an idea. If you want your boss to think it's his idea, mirror. If you want to have credit for the idea, but have your boss think it's a good idea, match. Because if you are mirroring him, he will think it's his idea. Like if you're looking in the mirror and you think it's you, right? So if you, hey boss, here's a great idea, make sure that you're matching, not mirroring, right? So yeah, any other questions? I see Ursula's, the wheels are turning.
Yes.
Because she's in a whole new team of people, so there's people that you're just getting to know right now. So this is a perfect time to practice it, you know. And the thing is that when you have rapport with someone, they will follow your suggestions. So make only good suggestions. Use this benevolently and lovingly and wisely, and I hope it really positively impacts your life the way it has impacted mine. Because I know pretty much, if I need to, I can find people to build alliances with and collaborate with and connect with in many, many different ways. And this is what I will often do when I'm first meeting someone. So that's the cool, and that's the way it is. And I'm going to finish up with a song.